This is Kid Shriner, the voice of the Green Arrow.
This is George Newbern, the voice of Superman.
You are listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
The original Justice League has become a memory.
I am resigning from the Justice League.
What's going to happen to the League now?
We rebuild. From the ashes of that great conflict, a new team has arisen. A much, much bigger team.
Each of you brings something different to the table.
Old friends, new heroes. And as usual, plenty of bad guys jumping up to get beat down.
Calm down, and I'll let you go. How about you kiss my ass?
Watch out, evildoers. There's nowhere to run. Because this year, they're all around you. The League is unlimited. An all-new original series, starring every superhero worth cheering for, and then some. Justice League Unlimited.
Where am I exactly?
Among friends.
There's strength in numbers.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 306 of the DCAU Review. I am one of your hosts, Cal. With me, my good friend, good brother, the man that runs our social media accounts. It's Liam. Liam, we are continuing here with our month of Justice League Unlimited cartoons as we have broken into Season 3 of Justice League Unlimited. We had a fun episode last week that sort of deviated from the central storyline of Season 3 involving the Injustice League, or I guess it's not the Injustice League, it's the Legion of Doom. And then this week we have another episode that sort of, for the most part, deviates from our main storyline, but does manage to tie things in a little bit, at least towards the end. Got another interesting one this week as we review episode 3 of season 3 of Justice League Unlimited.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting a feel for this. This is like the road trip season of this show. We're going to just weird little corners of the DC universe we haven't ever touched before here in the DCAU, and we have another example of that as we're about to meet some interesting people who live in the center of the earth, I guess, or maybe they don't, maybe it's another dimension. But regardless, we are talking about the episode Chaos at the Earth's Core.
That is right, and you're right. At least according to the DCAU wiki, Bruce Timm says that it exists in a pocket dimension, so it's in a different dimension.
It's not like the new King Kong Godzilla movie where there's just a hollow Earth and then a hollower Earth inside that hollow Earth.
Correct. Yes, we're not.
Good movie.
not one of those egg nesting dolls.
Okay, noted.
No. Yeah, we have an interesting one to talk about today for sure. We will get to our breakdown as well as the rest of our 4 categories in just a moment. But before we do, we will of course get to the official IMDb synopsis for this week's episode, which originally aired here in the United States on the Cartoon Network back on September the 24th, 2005. Interestingly, 2 episodes debuted on that date, according to the DCAU wiki, but we're only covering one today. Back on September the 24th, 2005, meaning we're coming up on the 19-year anniversary of this episode's debut. Liam, before we get to the official IMDb synopsis, we will, of course, remind our listeners at home that this synopsis is brought to you by, as it is each and every week, The Pod Tower. Head over to youtube.com/The Pod Tower today. And not only will you get our entire catalog of podcast episodes, all 305 previous episodes to this one, as well as every single bonus episode and spin-off episode that we've done to date, but you also get the entire catalog for Tim Talk, which covered this fine episode, as well as every other episode of the DCAU, and the ongoing series from the folks at Watchtower Database, which is called Jump on the Bat-Wagon. A really interesting look as they're going sequentially through the air dates, I believe, of the original DCAU series. So check those out. It's a fun place. It's YouTube. A lot of people are listening to their podcasts on YouTube these days. So head over today to youtube.com/thepodtower and subscribe.
That's right. So this is the synopsis for Chaos at the Earth's Core, which is written by Matt Wayne, directed by Joaquin DeSantos, with music by our dynamic music partners and animation by DR Movie Co. And that synopsis reads as such. Green Lantern, Stargirl, S.T.R.I.P.E, and Supergirl are drawn to the subterranean world of Skartaris to assist the warlord, Travis Morgan. Pretty good.
Yeah, that's a pretty good synopsis. Yeah,
that's the TV guide blurb.
I would say you didn't spoil anything. You didn't give anything away. You didn't misrepresent anything, and there were no infactual elements.
That's right. But as we kick off here, that's another thing I feel like I noticed. There's probably a lot of JLU episodes that do this, but we once again are kicking off like mid another adventure, which I think is a fun idea, which I like because it feels like maybe these characters aren't just like preserved in amber when we aren't watching them, like they're just constantly doing adventures that we never get to see. So that's pretty fun. But yes, they're fighting a giant turtle with orange hair in Tokyo, and Stargirl is being a little bit of a show off and trying to sort of take off more than she can chew, perhaps, because she wants to prove that she is tough enough to handle this thing by herself, despite S.T.R.I.P.E, who is of course her stepdad. They don't really touch on that too much. I think they mention it, but in the comics, that's the relationship there. And then of course Green Lantern also in the field with them, trying to keep things a bit more tactical, but Stargirl isn't listening and ultimately looks a little bit overmatched before finally Supergirl swoops in to save the day. And that's where we introduce like our emotional, if there is an emotional through line of this episode. Stargirl is a show off and then doesn't like getting showed up.
Arigato. Thank you. Arigato. 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 How'd she get here anyway? What's with all the wannabes?
Probably here for the convention.
Convention?
When we get back to the Metro Tower, you and I are going to have a talk about grandstanding.
Tell that to her. The little show-off stole my thunder. Ow! Don't you talk about Supergirl! Supergirl can melt you with her eyes! Big whoop. My stepdad here is a mecha.
Mecha so last year.
She's very big in Japan.
Because Supergirl knocks the turtle into this little cargo ship area where a cure for giant turtleism is waiting.
It's a kaiju cure.
That's right. I think this might be a reference to there's like an oxygen device that they use on Godzilla, I think, in the old movies.
Yeah,
so I don't know if that's what this is a reference to.
I was gonna say, you mentioned Godzilla right off the bat here. There's lots of references here, including references to apparently the giant turtle monster was also a reference to not only Jimmy Olsen turned into a giant turtle, but also apparently referenced an old movie that had a giant turtle attacking.
Yes, I believe that's Gamera or Gamera. But yes, so they defeat the giant turtle, and there's I'll save it for visuals, but there's a great bit here when the giant turtle's turning back that I enjoy. But they defeat the giant turtle, and as the Justice League is sort of debriefing, we see that Supergirl has a little bit of a fan club. She is, in all intents and purposes, like a pop idol for young girls in Japan. It appears there's apparently a convention going on, which is why she was in town in the first place during this mission. So she, as she is being given a lot of praise from her young fans, Stargirl continues to kind of complain about her and say that she's not so great, and has a run-in with one of Supergirl's fangirls, who is not too happy to hear it. But as they all board the Javelin to head back,
there's a convention in town. Don't forget.
I mentioned that.
Yeah, you gotta love it. Supergirl's so popular over there. Green Lantern points out she's big in Japan. Another.
She's Sailor Moon, I guess, which I never really thought about. That's probably the influence of that old costume, right?
Oh,
I've never seen that with like the real small blue mini skirt and the red boots and everything. It's probably there's probably some Sailor Moon in that original design, but as we'll talk about in visuals, she's updated her look a little bit here. But yes, as Supergirl enjoys the praise and Stargirl is quite embarrassed and frustrated by it all. Eventually, the Justice League leaves, boards the Javelin, and begins to head back. As they're flying over the North Pole, a mysterious Deus Ex Machina pulls them into a crack in the polar ice caps, and before they know it, they're strangers in a strange land. And instead of nuns and dynamites, it's nuns and dinosaurs. I don't know. I'm trying to workshop something. There's dinosaurs. They get attacked by lizard men who are riding on other dinosaurs.
Yep, half human, half lizard. Yep, Dr. Kirk Connors is at it again, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
I just wondered the hierarchy here, because this is like Goofy and Pluto, right? There's some dino men that are like standing upright and can speak, as we hear in a few scenes later. And then there's other ones that are just regular dinosaurs. So I wonder if there's like an evolution ray that they only use on Slight One. Is this like an orc versus Urukai thing? I don't know. We'll have to leave that up to perhaps some folks listening. Give us your theories on why there are some dinosaurs who are dudes and some who are just regular dinosaurs.
Well, I was going to say the only answers that we have are left up to our own speculation, because much like a lot of this episode, for better or for worse, a lot of it is not explained. And we don't get a lot of background. I mean, we sort of get some exposition as we go along. We are introduced right away as the Lanterns, as the Green Lantern and the rest of the League are attacked by these dinosaur-riding dinosaurs. They seem to be able to take care of most of them as they try and recover. By the way, wherever they are has a red sun, so Supergirl is powerless or depowered. She's not completely powerless. She talks about her power being at least 50% or lower, but it's very obvious that she's powering down as the episode goes along. So she, of course, Stargirl, takes some very like unheroic delight in Supergirl's downfall. She's she's in the hater community here, and she's glad to be proven right. Like, Supergirl has to say, the haters said I couldn't do it, and congrats to my haters. Because that's basically what happens initially here. Supergirl, despite trying her best, is not able to overcome one of the dinosaurs and has to be saved.
Oh, dang. Heads up!
Cover Supergirl!
What are you waiting for? Zap him with your star thingy! Oh, may I? Because it would be such an honor to help the great Supergirl out of a jam. Come on! You are so loving this.
Scanning the area. Yep, that's the last of them.
And just as it seems as the League has taken care of all of them, wouldn't you know, the T-Rex happens to show up, and it appears they're going to have to do battle again, but saving them is a man in a beard, shirtless man in a beard with a skull, shoulder pad, and a chain drooped across his chest, and he's wearing like a loincloth and some fur boots. It is not He-Man, I will tell you that. It is none other than the Warlord of Shambhala, also known as Travis Morgan, which this is a real comic in DC lore, by the way, folks.
Yeah, it is.
You can go back to
the universe, but DC.
Right. I don't know I think Masters of the Universe came around in the 80s, and this technically debuted before that, like in the 70s, but it's basically the same I think it's the same idea. We're not Masters of the Universe guys, so forgive us. There's no Skeletor, we know that.
Right.
But
not 1-to-1 because I think He-Man's just a guy who lives in that place. He's like a prince or something. And this is the guy who gets like transported. It's like if a regular guy got transported into He-Man world, I guess.
Correct. Yes. We learn after he saves the Justice League, we learn he was in the Air Force, was transported there at some point, has basically become their protector, and he's the person that's been placed in charge of keeping that place safe. And we learn that there's an evil wizard named Demos who's using advanced technology, and he's the bad guy. He's Skeletor essentially in this case. And we're introduced to the Warlord's daughter, Jennifer, who admits to being the one responsible for bringing the Justice League through the portal so that they could help them stand against Demos and their upcoming battle against him. In this exposition dump, Warlord also mentions that Demos's plan is to attack them and steal the Great Stone, which apparently is the source of their power and has the power to create life or death. And he says that Demos is the type of guy that isn't interested in creating very much life. So we know that he has nothing but evil plans for it. The Justice League is quickly introduced to this Great Stone as they reveal it.
Morgan. Makist. Best guy I know. King of Kiro. Makist knows as much about the Great Stone as anybody. Makist, this is Green Lantern.
Hey.
When the Black Death came upon me, my case seemed hopeless. Until the monks of the Tabernacle placed me before the Great Stone and let me bathe in its rays.
It's a curative?
Only for the most desperate. It can cure or kill.
And Demas isn't the healing type.
Behold! The Great Stone!
Okay? I've never seen a piece of kryptonite that big before.
And wouldn't you know, it turns out to be the world's most giant kryptonite rock. It's like, I don't know. It's just a giant thing of kryptonite. And they keep it behind a door, and Supergirl is immediately affected by it. But she says that because she doesn't have her powers, it didn't kill her. I didn't understand that line at all.
Yeah, I don't quite understand. It's also, I guess it depends on the version. Like sometimes it feels like kryptonite just makes her and Superman just like ill, like incapacitates them, and then when the rock is gone, they're fine.
Yep.
Like, and that's kind of how they always played it on Smallville, but sometimes also it like is poisoning them, and if it sits near them long enough, they die.
Right.
Which it seems like that's the issue here, because as we will get to in a moment, she has a fight with someone with kryptonite, and it's suggested that just being around it would slowly kill her. So
yeah,
I guess that's the current rule set, but also because she's under this red sun, it's killing her less quickly.
Sure. Makes less sense than I'd care to admit, but okay, sure. Okay.
Well, it's a weird line to put, because it's clearly a line where they have this discussion where they're like, okay, if she's that affected and kryptonite can kill her, can kill Superman, how could she stand around while this giant, like, you know, boulder-sized piece is 10 feet away from her? I'm like, well, we'll just say it's what's going on in this episode that we can blame it on her not dying. I don't know. You could have just not had her in the scene, but
yeah,
say she's back at the camp resting or whatever. But
I guess they had to establish that it was kryptonite because they it's part of the scheme for the people that show up here in the next couple scenes. But regardless, we basically learn that the warlord is trying to use the stone to bring peace to the land, whereas Deimos is trying to bring death. A classic good versus evil story. The warlord's daughter has brought the Justice League there to defend them, so that in the upcoming battle they can protect the giant stone. Back at Deimos's camp, we're introduced to him, and he's just your classic evil-looking Jafar-esque supervillain with his chest out.
Satan.
Got the big,
that big pointy goatee that only
big pointy goatee. It's got the big cape.
Yeah, he's got like Doctor Strange's big collar cape and a big pointy Satan jaw and goatee.
Just the epitome of evil. I mean, his name's Deimos, so real subtle. They used a lot of subtlety in creating this character. Again, not the JOU writers. He's not a great
blame Mike Grell,
right?
Who wrote and drew the character originally.
He really wanted to get it across. This guy was no good, and he isn't.
Lord Deimos, the alien force escaped us.
Describe them.
My lord, it happened so fast.
How many were there? Did they have weapons? Did they address each other by name?
One wore a coat of arms!
Well, you're my military advisors. Do you recognize this crest?
Yes, I know it well.
And we learn very quickly that Deimos is not good because he brings in one of these lizard soldiers who is reporting back from their battle with the Justice League. And he reports that they were strange people. He had never seen them before. And just before Deimos kills them, he reveals that one of them was wearing a coat of arms. He draws the coat of arms in the dirt, and it is, of course, Superman's logo. It is at this point Deimos goes ahead and kills him anyway. So, to coin a phrase, see, I kill my own men. That's how evil he is. And at this point, coming out of the shadows are his, what does he call them? His ministers of defense or something like that? His
military advisors,
which hilarious. He has a hierarchy here. And these two strangers that have come through the portal have risen up through the ranks immediately to be military advisors.
Yeah, he gave them like official ranks, like Metallo is the Secretary of Defense, and I don't know, Silver Banshee's the Secretary of State. I don't know.
Something like that. But yes, and that's the reveal of our two villains as we see Metallo walk out and admits that he recognized it, and a silent Silver Banshee is just behind him. So it's at this point we know that Metallo is there. He's aware of what's going on, and we know that what's to come in the battle between good and evil here is sure to be one interesting punch-up with an already weakened Supergirl versus and Green Lantern and Star and Stripe versus Metallo, who is very much alive, and Silver Banshee, along with these lizard men riding in on their Tyrannosaurus Rexes and pterodactyls and all this semi-futuristic, like it's the machinery that they end up using. We'll talk about maybe in visuals, but it's all like period pieces that have been upgraded. It's pretty interesting. So this all leads to ultimately what's going to be a battle right at the wall of where the warlord and his forces are keeping this great stone, as Deimos and his army arrive at the wall, and they're ready to kick some butt.
Absolutely. And yeah, we get a giant like Lord of the Rings style battle, which we'll certainly talk about between the two armies. We'll talk about that more in visuals, but as the fighting continues, we see some of these weird devices. They have like little mini laser drill things that cut a hole into the side of a mountain, which allows Deimos to get inside along with Metallo, and there, so he's headed for the Great Stone there. And as they continue to continue with the fight. There's a lot of it's hard to describe this in a plot sense because it's just a lot of fighting that we see. Like at some point, Silver Banshee is out there killing guys, and then Green Lantern and her have a brief confrontation, but he has to defend himself, so she's able to slip away. And so there's just a whole lot going on. We see Jennifer and the Warlord's wife, Shakira. Her name is Shakira.
Shakira.
That's right. We are not aware of the truthfulness or lack thereof of her hips. Unfortunately, that's not addressed in the episode. But yes, as S.T.R.I.P.E and Green Lantern continue on in the field, the Warlord and Stargirl make it inside along with Deimos and Metallo. And Stargirl attempts to fight off Deimos and actually succeeds because even though he's supposed to be a wizard, we find out he just kind of has these like Iron Man laser things on his wrists. And other than that, he's just a guy with a sword, as it turns out.
I thought he says he's magic, but he's definitely not.
Right, which I think is like a fun idea of like this guy who just gets his hand on like weird future technology in this swords and shields world, and so he just pretends he's a wizard. But so he's Stargirl's able to overmatch him, but at that point Metallo rushes in and takes down Stargirl as Deimos and the Warlord go off to have a good old-fashioned sword fight on the steps. And so just as Metallo is seemingly ready to claim this giant piece of kryptonite, the Great Stone, Supergirl arrives, trying to stand tall despite clearly being weakened by both the sun and the kryptonite. And now Metallo, the man with the kryptonite heart, is here.
Touch it and you're tinfoil.
At this distance, the kryptonite cell that powers me would bring your cousin to his knees.
I'm immune to kryptonite, metal mouth. Give up!
If you're immune, love, why do you need that staff? You filthy brat! Where are you?
They try to draw back and forth. She tries to convince him that she's immune to kryptonite, which is a funny thing because in the Superman Adventures tie-in comics, she was immune to kryptonite.
Right. It's a very inconsistent sort of and it wasn't am I butterfly affecting this thing? Like I feel like that there wasn't something in the show before where she showed less than like she wasn't affected by it. It was just in the comic.
I guess so, because like she gets hit by the kryptonite gun in Legacy and she's hurt by that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember her ever being exposed directly to just like a rock like of it before.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
She is damaged by the gun in Legacy. I think that's the only time. I don't think there's any kryptonite in Little Girl Lost or Unity, Dollar in the Bad episode jar. But yes, so I guess this is the first time on screen that we're really seeing her directly confirm. Oh, and I guess they operate on her with a kryptonite tipped robot thing. They mentioned they did it in the Galte episode. So I guess they've mentioned it on screen. But yes, in the comics, that's like the first thing I remember about this episode was like, oh, right, this was the one that made a bunch of comics non-canon. Because in the comics, of course, in this DCAU world, for those who don't remember Little Girl Lost, she's not from Krypton. She's from Argo, which was a sister planet, which was knocked out of orbit when Krypton exploded. Mm-hmm. So theoretically, kryptonite shouldn't affect her, but whatever, it does. So she's having her battle with Metallo. She grabs Stargirl's staff to try to defend herself. And does manage to take one of his arms off, but she's too weak to finish the job. And so we've got kind of our sword fight going on with the Warlord and Deimos. We've got Metallo marching slowly but surely towards Supergirl, trying to finish her off. as we head towards our climax for this episode.
That's right. So we're left to find out exactly what's going to happen next. Meanwhile, the fight is still occurring. The sword fight, which has occurring between Deimos and the Warlord. It ends pretty anticlimactically. There's just a sword fight happening, and as the sword fight gets crescendos to its end, they're battling up a set of stairs, and Warlord moves to the side, and Deimos sort of like Wile E. Coyotes himself off the edge of the stairs and into the abyss, thus ending his life. So in the meantime, we do cut back to Supergirl, who is being pursued by Metallo, a one-armed Metallo at this point, and she's doing her best to stave off his attacks, including getting one of the guns that she finds and tries to shoot that at him. It does very little. He chases her up some stairs. He shoots her with. He remembered that he could project his kryptonite heart at this point and shoots it at her. I believe that was an upgrade thanks to Intergang, if we recall canonically. So he's able to project his kryptonite heart through blasts at her, and so he's able to overtake her. His one arm there is holding her by the throat, seemingly about to kill her, gloating. He says that she doesn't have half the strength of her cousin Superman, but she comes back with, yes, but she has brains, and she's holding a sword that she proceeds to cut his heart out with. And this is something also that I would say is inconsistent based on how things have worked before. So he loses his heart, and he immediately can't move, which we've seen before, where I'm pretty sure he's been able, like, I think it's in the Action Figures episode where he loses his heart and still chases after it.
Superman throws it to the volcano and he runs after it.
So
maybe to make the laser eyes and the projectile heart work, they had to disable the additional battery charging that the heart does.
I like that canonical explanation there. It could happen. It could work.
You lied, little one. I can see the illness creeping over you. You have none of Superman's strength.
But I got brains.
I can't move without my kryptonite battery, but it's killing you.
I won't quit. You don't have to.
Sure.
But nonetheless, the story is that when his heart is removed, he's able to talk, but he's not able to move. So he's sitting there holding Supergirl by the throat. As you mentioned earlier on, he gloats that even though she's cut out his heart, he can't move. She can't move because she's in a weakened state and being held there as the kryptonite sits on the ground. He says it'll slowly kill her. But coming in to save the day is Stargirl, who picks up the kryptonite heart and launches it far, 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 far away. This allows Supergirl to break free. They take care of Metallo at this point, and all is right with the world as everyone else is celebrating not only the death of Deimos, but also Silver Banshee got taken care of in the battle, I guess. She
just runs away. Green Lantern stops her from killing some guys, and then he has to shield himself from one of those dinosaur laser cannons. One of those
things. Yeah.
And then when he turns back around, she Batmans him. She's gone. So That's the last we see of Silver Banshee. So she survives to be a background character in various Legion of Doom scenes set at their headquarters for the rest of the season.
There you go. I was going to say, by the way, does this episode removing Metallo's arm, was there foreshadowing of this in the scene that we saw him with Luthor getting the tour of the Legion of Doom headquarters, where he was comparing his arm to KG Beast's arm? This is a little bit of foreshadowing here. What do you think?
Like that too. Yeah, maybe he's thinking about some future upgrades he could get.
He'll really need them at this point, now that he doesn't have an arm, but
or a brain.
Yeah, well, yes, and that's where we go to next. Is we're back in the caves, and we have this huge conference that's happening between GL and the S.T.R.I.P.E, Stargirl, and Supergirl, who are demanding answers from Metallo. He's getting the full exposition dump treatment here, as Green Lantern reminds us everything there is to know about Metallo. He runs on the heart. He's only got a little bit of battery power left before he shuts down completely. What's going to happen? Is he going to tell them? He's playing the role of Batman here, threatening to just let the power die out on him, which I don't know why, but that convinces Metallo at that point that he's going to tell the truth just to what happened, how they got there, who they're working with, and just before he can spill the beans, nuns and dynamite. His brain fries, and we don't get an answer quite there, as we learn that somebody else had control over his mind at that point, but we're not quite sure who. The League certainly isn't quite sure as to what happened, but they decide that they're going to take him back to see Jean to hopefully get some answers here, because there has to be somebody else involved here.
John Corbin, alias Metallo. Fancy meeting you here in the center of the Earth. Muling kryptonite with Silver Banshee. You could pretty much run forever on this one little chunk. And without it, what do you have? 15 minutes of reserve power? 10? Tell me, why do you want so much? There's enough in that tabernacle to satisfy 100 Superman haters.
There's a scary thought.
You won't get anything out of me.
Pretty soon, you aren't gonna have the breath to talk. Who knows? 5 minutes. 1.
All right. I've joined forces with you.
Whoa, Nelly! This isn't Silver Banshee's work. Somebody else didn't want Metallo to give them up.
You'll take that thing with you.
Definitely. And the Great Stone, too. Let GL whip it into the sun.
Wait! This is the one place where kryptonite can do some good.
That is a fact.
We don't want Silver Banshee coming back after it. So the only way I'll let the stone stay here is if we seal the portal to Skartaris permanently.
Fine by me. I got everything I need.
John says that the League's going to be on their way now. They're going to take not only the kryptonite heart of Metallo, but they're also going to take the Great Stone. They're also going to hurl it into the sun. But Supergirl actually protests and says that this is the one place on Earth ? Where where kryptonite can do some good. So why not leave it here and let the good people of Skartaris use it? So John agrees to this, but says that the only way that he's going to agree so that Silver Banshee or anyone else can't come back to this dimension is to seal off the portal completely, and the Warlord says he's more than happy to agree to that. So we're flashback. John somehow seals the portal using his ring, and the rest of the League flies off as Stargirl and S.T.R.I.P.E follow behind a recently repowered Supergirl, who back on Earth, of course, is enjoying her bask in vitamin B12, of course, from the sun. So or that's vitamin D, not vitamin B12. Yeah. Vitamin D. So wrong.
Maybe take a multivitamin. Maybe Skartaris has multivitamins.
That's right. Hey, it could be canon. It could be canon in there. They could have mentioned it. I wouldn't have noticed.
Exactly.
But as they continue to talk there, that's where GL reveals that they're going to have Jean do a scan of Metallo's mind, because he wants to know just exactly what's going on. But he thinks that something is happening behind the scenes here, and something much bigger than they're all aware of. So, and that's how we end the episode. All right, Liam. Honest thoughts for this. It's I think this is a case where I actually think this episode may have worked better. I don't know. Part of me thinks this episode would have worked better as a 2-part Justice League episode because you could have laid things out a little bit clearer and established some characters and told a little bit of the backstory and explained the mythos a little bit more and have not felt so rushed.
This does feel like a season 1 episode.
Yeah, it does. It feels like this could have been like Real World or any of those that they just kind of shrunk down and they're like, well, we've done all these other sort of ancillary, off the wall, weird parts of the DC universe. Why don't we go to Scar Terrace and include this? Which, hey, I'm all for this abstract, unique, weird parts of the universe. Like, sure, include it all. I feel like I would have rather seen like an Adam Strange though, or something like that.
Yes.
The characters that were used here, which could have been very similar, but maybe that was one of those characters they weren't allowed to touch still, in their animation for some reason. So I don't know. It's a very weird tone for the episode. I think I don't know how you could possibly care about any of the characters that aren't the Justice Leaguers. It doesn't feel at any point to me, or it didn't feel at any point to me, that there was any sort of real danger for many of the characters. Supergirl's the only one that you really has a sense of danger, and because she gets trapped by Metallo.
Supergirl and that one dinosaur guy who gets
the one dinosaur guy who gets eliminated. I don't know. Like the stakes I feel like the stakes don't feel very high here. It doesn't feel like it's like they made it clear that the Great Rock was able to create life or death there in the universe, but I don't think it's very clear that the Metallo and Banshee were even after the giant stone. Like I don't think
they mention it because when GL is interrogating him at the end, he's like, "What are you doing here mining kryptonite with Silver Banshee?"
Right. Right. Yeah, that's true, I guess. But that's in the last scene. Like you don't even discover that till the very last scene, and it feels like such a throwaway line. I don't know. It's fine. I think that the visuals make up for most of the episode because it's certainly an visually interesting episode. But as far as the plot goes, this is not one that I liked very much at all. It's a big bowl of okay. It's why I ended up giving it a 5 out of 10 as far as plot score is concerned. I probably could have gone lower if I wanted to be really mean, but I like the idea of for absolutely no reason, Supergirl jealousy that Stargirl has.
She's just mean.
It's like
some teenagers are just mean. Like
sure, yeah. She just doesn't like the fact that she's more popular than her or gets more accolades or what have you. So, I don't think this episode really worked from a story standpoint, and it moves the overarching story forward about a quarter inch, all things considered.
Sure.
So, that's why I ended up giving plot 5 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, so I agree. It feels like I said, this is a road trip episode. This is wouldn't it be cool to go to Scar Terrace and do a Warlord versus Deimos episode and have the dinosaur men and the wacky, there's like goblin guys too in Deimos's army. I don't know if we mentioned them, but we'll talk more about that in visuals. But all these weird creatures and on the supporting characters, guy with mace for hand and Jennifer and Shakira and all that. Like you get all the elements. So I'm sure if you were someone who read this read Warlord comics, this was probably a real treat for you just to see all of that recreated so faithfully. And like I said, there's a lot of good stuff we'll talk about in visuals. But yeah, the episode as a whole, I feel like they didn't pick a lane where is the B thing that Stargirl hates Supergirl, but she's going to ultimately learn and feels that she's only like popular and well liked because she's Superman's cousin. And oh, you take away those superpowers, and what is she? And then Stargirl's like inspired by her because she sees how hard Kara continues to fight, even though she doesn't have the advantages of being invulnerable. Like, okay, that would be an interesting lane to take, and we kind of get that at the end,
right?
Like she saves her from Metallo, and then Stargirl returns the favor and yeets the kryptonite out of there, and then they have like a little banter back and forth about who has the more who had the more restrictive upbringing between her with her stepdad and Kara on the Kent farm. Like that's kind of fun. I like the little banter there at the end. But or it feels like the plot should be Supergirl is getting a big head because she's coming from this convention in her honor in Japan, and she on her way she just showed up for 2 seconds and killed and knocked this giant turtle out, and wow, she just feels like her ish doesn't stink right now, and then she's humbled a little bit, and she has to learn how to fight with a sword and a shield because she's never had to learn how to defend herself really because she has these powers, and now she has to learn like a lesson in humility. Like it feels like that could be what we're doing, but we don't really do either. Like there's one scene where she's overmatched in the battle when they first get there, and then like when the battle starts on the front lines, she just grabs a sword and like jumps off the wall down into the battle. So there's not a moment of like her hesitating or her learning a lesson about that, and we don't really get enough of like her and Stargirl. The friction there doesn't feel like I said, other than like I like the way it's set up, and I like the final scene, the little resolution where they're buddies at the end, but it feels like we're missing the middle part where they actually like learn and grow together and learn from each other and that kind of stuff.
I mean, I think it would have even been, to your point, like you could have expounded on it and made Supergirl sort of relish in the fact, like she's completely oblivious to it at the beginning. Like she doesn't play into it at all. I mean, S.T.R.I.P.E makes a little remark about her having super hearing and Stargirl talking trash about her, like maybe not wanting to do that. But you could have taken it to that point where Supergirl's like, "Hey, what the heck? Why do you have beef with me?" and been like really hurt by it, or sort of relishing in the fact that Stargirl has beef with her and be like, you know what? I'm going to turn this up to 11 and I'm going to be the most annoying, like boisterous version of Supergirl, to the point where she then gets transferred to this other dimension, loses her powers, has to eat, dirt a little bit here, and then end up needing Stargirl's power or help, as the one that has powers. Cause there's no real, it's like you said, it just turns out Stargirl's really mean for some reason, and Supergirl is getting treated like crap. And then at the end, she still needs Stargirl to save her. And then they have this little bonding portion. There's like a piece of that puzzle that is missing there for a better story.
Yeah, it feels like Stargirl doesn't really learn a lesson for like actually Supergirl's on the team because she's heroic, and she'll, even when her life is in great danger, she'll, still dive headfirst into battle.
Right.
Again, I feel like you could show that maybe if you had more time, but so that maybe that goes back to your idea of this being, what could have been a 2-part episode in some other incarnation of the show at some point. So for all those reasons, I gave it a 4. It's like I said,
you were meaner than I was.
Yeah,
you were Stargirl and I was Supergirl.
Kind of, yeah. Like I said, I think there's potential here for like a fun, interesting episode. One, just I like that it's in a unique location. I like that we get to see all these Scarteris characters, which we will never see again. But then right at the end, they take Metallo back with them, and then they seal the portal to Scarteris forever. So, I mean, like I said, you get the little nugget at the end of, okay, the Justice League has their first inkling that something is going on with this network of supervillains working together, and whoever Metallo's boss was just fried his brain to keep him from talking. So like there is that's the only nugget of like as far as kicking the can down the road for the big overarching plot, which is fine. Not every, these shows are not just plot delivery devices. You can have a fun little sidetrack. I mean, we had a lot of great things to say about last week's episode, for instance. Like it's kind of a fun side quest, so to speak. But this one, I'm like, other than all the fun stuff, a lot of which I think relies on the great visuals, which we'll talk about in a second. There's just nothing to this. And the most interesting things in it are either it should be about Supergirl getting a big head and being humbled and then, learning what it takes to be a hero and all that. Or it should be about Stargirl, seeing that it isn't just the S on her chest or the superpowers that make her Supergirl. It's that she, will dive headlong into danger, and she's inspired by that and kind of learns her lesson about what it takes to be a real hero. And like, but we don't really get that either way.
Yeah.
Like, if anything, we get a very rushed sort of they didn't like each other, but now they like each other at the end. So yeah, a little disappointing to say the least, but I don't know. We've seen worse, I guess, from a plot point, but yeah, I think we can move on to something that is actually fun to talk about in this case.
Absolutely, Lane. Let's move on to our next category, which is going to be animation and visuals. And correct me if I'm wrong, we have DR Movie Co. again this week for our animation and visuals. And it's directed by Joaquim Dos Santos and written by Matt Wayne. By the way, Matt Wayne wrote a lot of season 2 of Justice League Unlimited, some pretty good episodes. So maybe it was just the subject matter that he wasn't really comfortable with writing here that it ended up giving us a lower score on our opinions. Again, it's our opinions, but just to say that Mr. Wayne did have some other good episodes that we enjoyed, sure. And some other ones down the line. He writes some more here in season 3 as well. But Liam, back to animation and visuals here as we're going through here. Lots of stuff, as you mentioned, right off the bat. We have a kaiju attack in Japan of a giant turtle man. Lots of fun. Like, it's topical, obviously. We have another Godzilla movie in the theaters, as we seem to do every 6 to 8 months. So it is certainly on point here, but of course it's in Japan also, and so we get some really interesting visuals of sort of the neon scene of Tokyo, and that kicks things off. As you mentioned, we already mentioned, there's visual homages in that to classic Godzilla movies as well as other monster movies and Turtle Boy Jimmy Olsen, all in one moment there. But yeah, I really like. I can
just mention, not to cut you off, but
no, go ahead.
In that Turtle Boy sequence, my favorite part is when after the gas that turns him back into regular turtle goes off, we see the reverse changing effect, and he's changing back into a little turtle, and we see like one final shot where it's just a regular turtle. But he's like looking up with a really mean look in his eyes, like this turtle is vowing revenge. He's like, I'm gonna get big again one day, and I'm gonna fight you again, Supergirl. I just thought that was so funny. Like, credit to whoever storyboarded that. I can't imagine that was in the script, so maybe I'm wrong there, but I bet that's just whoever was boarding that sequence threw that in. It's just, like, we just see a regular turtle mean mugging Supergirl. It's such a funny little bit to throw in there.
Yeah, really, really funny there. That's a good point. Supergirl gets a new outfit. We get the first appearance of Supergirl's sort of.
She's got bangs.
That's right. She had a little bit of a crisis, and she decided to. That's also a DC pun. She had a little bit of a crisis. She got bangs. Yeah. So she's in her classic red skirt and blue top, and she doesn't look as much like a teenager anymore, I guess. I don't know. Good for her. She's all grown up as her story continues to evolve here throughout this season. We have more Supergirl stories to tell, but thumbs up, thumbs down. Do you prefer this take on Supergirl's costume versus the old sort of blue skirt and and combat boots look with the white shirt that we saw from S.T.A.S.?
I mean, I feel like that original design is more like the Superman the animated series design, which we see in the first 2 seasons of JLU, is just like super iconic to me. So on one hand, it's a little bit of a shame, but as a point, and not to spoil anything for a cartoon that aired 20 years ago, but there is an episode later on that marks that it's her 21st birthday, and they're kind of making the point that she's getting older and is kind of ready to get out from under her cousin's shadow a little bit. So I think it's as a point of difference, and also as a point of difference to make her a little bit like taller and more mature looking than Stargirl, who is supposed to be like 15 or whatever. It probably helps that way as well. I don't remember hearing like a specific reason of why they decided, or reading a specific reason of why they decided to revamp her look in this final season. I don't know if it was just a point of difference for some of the younger heroes on the team or what, but or just because they knew they were going to tell this story later with her,
I think,
getting older.
It's not on the DCAU wiki, but I remember seeing that Bruce Timm said that he just wanted it to sort of modernize it for that time, that he felt that the original look was sort of resting in that 90s period, so he just wanted to bring it into the new millennium, I believe.
That's fair. And the classic, I guess what you would call the classic Supergirl outfit, now put into the DCAU version, that's an all-time iconic look. Like that's right up there with with the big man himself as far as just an iconic costume. So yeah, like I said, it's a little bit bittersweet because I love that original design a lot, but it makes sense for all the reasons we just listed.
Yeah, I dig it. I like it as a change, and as you mentioned, that with the character changes coming, that also adds to that and establishing that she's older now than when we first met her. So we like that. All right. Once we get to Scar-Terrace, there's just like an avalanche of interesting things. We have anthropomorphic dinosaurs, we have real dinosaurs, we have all this unique magic technology that they're using that's both medieval but also modern. I think the majority of it is probably shown off outside of the dinosaur men riding dinosaurs, is shown off during the battle scene at the Scar-Terrace castle. Which is pretty awesome. I mean, Mr. Dos Santos, we've talked about before. He can certainly direct a fight scene, and that fight sequence is pretty awesome because most of the characters are sort of standing on the ground when they're doing their battle, despite all of them being able to fly. It's kind of unique. Green Lantern gets to do some really cool constructs in this episode. He makes his own pterodactyl in the fight sequence. He does a lot of hand stuff. Like he makes a lot of fists and hands to slap and stuff like that.
Speaking of hand stuff, S.T.R.I.P.E. also got a redesign this season. He's not in like a big mech robot anymore. He's Iron Man now.
That's right. Yeah, which means that they can do all kinds of cool classic Iron Man poses. I love the rocket hands. Like that's not Iron Man to me, but like his hands come off and fly around as rockets and punch these monsters in the face. Like really, really cool. And then they you follow the hands back onto his body and he's like back there ready to fight more. Super, super neat. You got a preference on
those fingertip machine guns too?
Yeah, a lot of weapons to show off here. Do you prefer the Iron Man suit versus the giant mech body, or what? You got a preference on your S.T.R.I.P.E.
I think of the those original like Stargirl and S.T.R.I.P.E. comics. Was one of Jeff Johns' first jobs as a writer in DC Comics, and so I kind of think of that big oversized like tank mecha suit as like that's a little more nostalgic for me. But it's not really a character that I ultimately care about very much. So I think it's cool. And again, all the stuff they do visually, I do like that. Even though it does feel very Iron Man, he's not laser based. He's all like machine gun and rocket based.
Yeah.
So he does have like a little bit of a point of difference from that. It's a suit instead of a like a tank that he rides in now, basically.
There you go. Yeah, dug that. I will say the scene where we are introduced to Metallo and Silver Banshee, really cool visual of them walking out of the shadow. You just see Metallo's one green eye. Like, you kind of see him from behind first, at least legs
got a
down.
red eye in that first scene for some reason.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is red. Yeah. Very odd choice there instead of going with the green eye. Mistake by the animators. But as he walks out of the shadow, pretty cool though to see him there, and then Silver Banshee behind him, who classic DC fans would be familiar with. But yeah, we love seeing that. And then I think just everything else in that battle scene, you had those like weird tunneling snake creatures that came out of the ground. You had the cannonballs that like burrowed into the side of the mountain, which creates the passage for Deimos and Metallo to get into the city. You had
like the Phoenix Force shows up for a second. We get the giant firebird that Jennifer conjures to attack the snakehead things.
There you go. Yeah, lots of good fisticuffs there. I mean, that's really outside of our initial kaiju battle. I think that's the heartbeat of what's going on there for the fight. There is, I mean, a sword fight. It's kind of hard to go from all of that fantastical things to just a normal sword fight happening between Warlord and Deimos. But I think I would have cared more if I had cared about either of the characters. But we did, again, that goes back to the plot itself, is not really having time to care or feel like there was much on the line here as far as the sword fight is concerned. But it is pretty cool. I love the part where they Deimos knocks Warlord's sword out of his hands, and it sticks in the ground, and then Warlord is able to get Deimos's sword out of his hands, and they switch swords. They go after each other's swords, and then they pick up and go back to fighting. I thought that was a pretty neat little sequence there. And then I did not remember that Metallo got his arm ripped off. I thought that was they're particularly violent to things here in this episode that they choose to. The dinosaur bites Stripe's head at one moment. Again, we've talked about it countless times here on the show, but anytime the animators got to be particularly violent with robots, they did. And in this case, with Metallo getting his arm ripped completely off right before having a sword, her staff driven into Stargirl's staff driven into his shoulder, very painfully looking.
Kind of, you can feel pain, like, because he screams in agony, and
that's true. That's also something that doesn't quite line up canonically, as we remember. Part of the reason why he gets furious with Lex Luthor in the first episode is he can't feel or taste or smell or anything. So maybe he's regained some of it. I don't know, but maybe he's just frustrated and screaming in frustration.
Perhaps.
That actually reminded me of which Marvel movie is it where they go after Thanos and they drive the giant sword hammer thing, axe thing into Thanos's neck. That whole sequence reminded me of that. Obviously, this came well before that. It's like, it's the Thanos thing. But yeah. So. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I got as far as interesting visuals. I guess at the end, you can talk about when Metallo gets his brain fried. That's pretty interesting, pretty violent also. But the rest of it's a lot of talking and a lot of exposition. And we did get some CGI javelin footage here, which I wasn't a fan of, but it's fine. Like I said, I think the main battle is what I would focus on mostly, and it was probably where the highlights for the episode came, because a lot of it is pretty low stakes or just doesn't feel like the tension is there based on the characters involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I think it's really fun seeing all of these weird Scarteris characters, like his Warlord's friend that just has a mace for a hand, and Jennifer, who like I said, she does some cool stuff with her vaguely defined magician powers. So there is magic in this world. It's just Deimos, I guess, doesn't actually have any. But we get some fun stuff with her. I like all of those design. The Warlord design is really cool. He's got like it's a real surreal. Dudes will see this and say, "Hell yeah!" When you look at that guy with his feathery helmet and his skull on his shoulder pad and whatever.
Right.
So yeah, like it's the visuals, all the backgrounds and stuff are really, really good when they're outside, because they have the red sun. Everything kind of has this like purplish, orangish hues to them. To the light in all of the outdoor sequences, which I think is really neat and gives it a bit more of a unique flavor in some of those battle sequences as well. And yeah, as mentioned, a lot of either implied or almost or cut away just before deaths in this episode, from the lizard man who gets vaporized by Deimos to various soldiers getting I guess we can't for sure say that Silver Banshee was killing those guys, but she's screaming in their face and they seem to be like withering away when she does it. So I think that looks pretty violent. Actually, one of the ones they're fighting, we stick on this one guy and he's real buff and he's got long blonde hair. And it looked to me like we may have snuck in a Kamandi, the last boy on Earth, into this scene. Maybe mixed with like the actual He-Man.
Agreed.
So I thought that was kind of a fun, obviously we know they would do whatever they could to fit as many Kirby references as they could into this stuff. So I thought that was a kind of a fun little cameo where we see him take out a few dinosaurs, and then that's when Silver Banshee shows up and starts wreaking havoc before Green Lantern shows up. So yeah, there's a lot of really neat visual stuff. The design, the character designs, the Deimos design is so good. And I'm sure it is just adapting, like a lot of these designs, adapting those original Mike Grell comics, but like he just looks like the devil. So I like that design quite a bit as well. So yeah, and I like Metallo's little blazer that he's wearing in what we first see.
The little fashion things are what would pop us sometimes. It's pretty
absolutely cool. He was in that turtleneck in Superman's pal, and now he's in like a long sleeve tee and a blazer and a khaki blazer. So I dig it. But yeah, for all those reasons, I ended up giving visuals and animation, especially for the blazer. I ended up giving visuals and animation a very strong 9 out of 10.
Nice. I just went 1 point lower with an 8 out of 10 for my score. Lots of good stuff in that middle scene. I think worth checking out. If you're only going to watch one scene, I think the battle scene is probably the one that I would advise. Interesting enough.
Just the scale of that too, of like all of those moving characters on the screen at once. I think we've seen like little snippets in other, like Night of Shadows, I think starts with like a big medieval battle that we see like glimpses of, but this has to be like we stay on that battle for a long time and cut to different parts of different characters, and there's all this movement going on in the background the whole time. So yeah, really a real feather in the cap of both our director and our animator for sure.
All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category today, and which is going to be music. And did I see Michael McQuestion in the credits? I saw him.
I believe you saw him, as well as our other two dynamic music partners, Christopher Carter and Lolita Romanis.
All right. So as far as music is concerned, with that whole battle scene is wonderfully soundtracked with a pretty intense battle sequence and battle soundtrack. I think the fight between Supergirl and Metallo is certainly one. I didn't catch any of Metallo's classic theme.
That really bummed me out. Like, because I just think that's such an all-timer of a theme. I know we bring it up every time we talk about Metallo, but
with that reveal, especially in the dark into the light, that would have, I think, made that scene a billion times more impactful.
There, and also I think when he's like slowly marching towards Supergirl when she's trying to get away from him, I feel like that's because we talked about like it's kind of like he's the Terminator,
right?
A lot of the times that feels like what the visuals are often based on, and so him just sort of methodically marching towards her while she's trying to think of anything to get away or to find a tool that can help her defeat him. It's like, man, I could have used that Metallo theme. We do get a little bit of the Supergirl theme, I think, brought in when she shows up to defend Stargirl.
No, that was something that I noticed right at the beginning. We do get Supergirl's theme, which I thought was great. But even if you did, which they seem to do a lot for the Justice League, was just kind of make it an electric guitar version of use the Justice League Unlimited electric guitar to do the Metallo theme. Oh man, I'm just dreaming now, fantasy booking this thing. But yeah, it was a little bit of a disappointment we didn't get the classic Metallo theme. None of the other heroes obviously have been established or focused on enough to really have a main theme. Didn't notice any GL theme used for John's parts, but that's not necessarily out of the ordinary either. But yeah, I think the fight sequence, the reveal of the giant stone, also there's some tension building music there. Also, as we learned the sinister nature behind the giant stone. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a ton other. I think the music kind of ramps up at the end. Also, when they get back to the real Earth, the real dimension, Supergirl gets her powers back and has been flying around, so we get a little bit more jubilant music that comes in there as she and Stargirl share with their stories of feeling restricted. So yeah, not a lot otherwise to write home about as far as I'm concerned. Didn't have a ton of other musical notes, which is why I ended up giving music a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I went with a 5 out of 10. I never feel quite bold enough to call what I would say about this a critique, but I don't think you always need to bring in those character themes, especially if you do have a genre specific episode. But here I thought, I was like, oh man, there's a couple points where I could have really used that Metallo theme, and it feels like it would have fit with what was going on with the theme. It's not just a member berry, let's play the old song here. But that's my mild. Like I said, I shudder to even call it criticism when we have people as talented as the three dynamic music partners working on this show. But yes, definitely the we get like this big epic filmic quality to those battle scenes, especially out in the field. So some really good stuff there.
All right, Liam, let's wrap things up here with our final category of the day, and that's going to be our voice actors and actresses. Not a huge cast here today. We had a lot of people, as we seem to do each and every week here with season 3 of Justice League Unlimited, pulling double and in some cases triple duty. Couple of them might surprise you, actually, as to the double duty they pulled. But let's go ahead and talk about this week's voice cast, shall we?
That's right. So I will just briefly mention we have Nicholas Guest. He plays the scared Dino soldier, who we've heard previously as Jack in Batman Beyond, as well as Luminous in. Is he Luminous in Superman as well as Justice League, or just the Justice League?
This says just in Justice League. Yeah, because I think it's isn't it Iron Man's voice in?
That's right. Yep,
Superman animated series. I think so. Yeah,
that's right. But a frequent Andrea Romano collaborator there in a small role. They put like a weird voice effect on all the Dino guys, which is kind of neat. So I enjoyed that. But playing Jennifer, the sorceress daughter of the warlord, as well as Silver Banshee and the Japanese fangirl who runs up and kicks Stargirl in the shin, and is Kim May Guest, or My Guest. Apologies if I'm butchering that middle name there. But one character we hear from a lot, especially as Justice League goes on. She played Kat Matui in the Hearts and Minds episode, and will later on play Linda Park in the Flash and Substance episode when we cover that one down the road. But she's voicing a lot of characters here, and I did have a little sigh of relief because the accent that is being done by this young Japanese woman that we meet, I was like, oh, I hope that's someone of Japanese descent in that voice, because we're gonna be in trouble if
it kind of is the most stereotypical English Japanese accent, like yes. Japanese person speaking English accent, and
it's a very funny scene, by the way. Like I said,
She kicks Stargirl square in the shin and is very unhappy with her treatment of Supergirl. She's the only person that has the stones to stand up. She's like, why isn't Green Lantern correcting her? Or her
like, I have to do this.
Stepfather, right? Like the fangirl kicks her in the shin is like, be nice to her.
What do you think the fan stan name for Supergirl fans is? Like like we got like what's the Swiftie equivalent of Supergirl?
I don't know. Sounds like a job for our listeners.
I was that might be our Spotify poll question of the week right there, and you can also add us at DCAU Review on Instagram or Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, now X, or even Threads, and let us know what you think the Supergirl stan community is called. But yes, good job by Miss Guest there. And then we have voicing Deimos, we have Douglas Dunning, who I think is just a hoot in this episode.
He's great. You know what my thought was, and maybe it was just because visually he sort of resembles him also. I was like, there will never be another David Warner to voice a Ra's al Ghul character. But you know what? If Mr. Dunning is still alive and out there, they're looking to cast another Ra's al Ghul. Like, I don't think he would be a bad choice. Like, he's pretty solid.
And I just like, it's funny you mentioned Jafar, because I was like, that scene where he's interrogating his own man, and then I'm like, he should start singing. I feel like he should start singing right now. Like, he just had that really like over the top, like Disney villain energy to it, but he feels genuinely threatening in that sequence, especially. Maybe less so when he's just fighting the warlord with the sword later. But yeah, I really enjoyed Mr. Dunning as Deimos there. And then we have a returning actor from Superman the Animated Series. We have Malcolm McDowell returning as Metallo. Wish he got more to do, but it's nice to hear his voice again, hear him voice Metallo. Unlike, I think it's the previous Justice League Metallo appearance was I think Corey Burton subbed in for Mr. McDowell. But yeah, here we have original recipe Metallo back. It's great to hear him. You just wish he had more to do.
Yeah, he doesn't have as many like funny one-liners. He's not. I mean, he's sort of. I don't know. Just sounds like he's sort of worn down. And maybe it's where we are with Metallo in this story, and he's just kind of worn out, and he's just trying to be intimidating, and he's gone through all this stuff.
His girlfriend broke up with him because he wouldn't move out of that junkyard.
Yeah. Let's less we talk about. Is that the second time we've talked about Superman's pal this episode?
The second Superman's pal, because I talked about his sassy little turtleneck that he wears in that episode.
I think we get double the dollars in that point. $4 in the bad episode jar. But yeah, there's not that one line that stuck out as like classic Malcolm McDowell. But of course he's not gonna disappoint. Tremendous, and whenever we get the opportunity to hear him, he is the voice of Metallo, and it's great to have him back.
Yeah, he's just like, he's such a great like trash talker in those episodes where it's like, okay, he's not fighting Superman, but he could theoretically kill Superman's cousin. Like, he should be really excited and really
yeah, like he tries. Like, it feels like he tries, but it also feels like he's just sort of resigned to the fact that he's ultimately going to be defeated. Like, he's like, I could kill your cousin with with a quarter of this kryptonite or whatever. And it's like, then later on when he's got her by the throat, it felt like he should be reveling in that a little bit more. But also maybe they were trying to get across that he was powering down and didn't have as much energy since his heart was cut out. I don't know.
Could be. But yes, that's like I said, good to hear his voice, but a little disappointing that he didn't have more to do. Playing the role of the Warlord, aka Travis Morgan, is Paul Guilfoyle, who folks might know from things like LA Confidential or Air Force One, as well as quite a few voice acting roles over the years. I think he's good. He's kind of one note, but again, for playing like I know, again, it's not technically a pastiche of He-Man because this character predates He-Man, but it feels influenced by that. Like, he's just very upright and morally sound, and And today, like he gives that speech to Deimos at the end where he's like, "Goodness will always rise up to fight tyranny." And it's like, oh my gosh, we're watching G.I. Joe or something. Like he's very like just upright and good and upright good guy. I do like his little like rah-rah speech he gives after the battle at the end. I feel like he gets to show a little bit more there.
It's the one dream worth fighting for. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's cast as he's the leader, right? He's the person that is trying to train these people to defend their country. He knows this evil insurgents is coming, and he has to rally a bunch of ragtag people to fight the evil reptile men. So I think he plays that, classic military man that's been transformed into a leader of men that have to fight against reptiles, tale as old as time, roll to a T. I think that he gets it across. Like he feels authentically like a leader. He feels authentically like somebody who was in the military and has been, maybe he's out of place as far as dimension is concerned, but he's gladly taken up the reins to continue that leadership role here and to fight for what is right wherever the evil stands opposed to it. So I do think it's a fine performance. I just wish I cared a little bit more about the character. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's certainly nothing about Mr. Guilfoyle's performance there, but yeah. And then rounding it out, we have our Justice Leaguers for the episode. We have Giselle Lauren playing Stargirl, who I really enjoy. Like I said, one of the few story highlights being that she just straight off the bat hates Supergirl, and for no other reason than that, like, Supergirl was successful at single-handedly stopping the Turtle Man, unlike she was. Like she's got some funny lines for going back and forth with Pat or Stripe, her stepdad, and then with Supergirl. I think like she's got some funny lines. She's just real mean. she's just mean and out of line, but it does provide some good comedic delivery for her.
Yeah, agreed. I'm surprised. I was looking at her Wikipedia page. She had a lot of projects in the early 2000s, including a lot of stuff in Buffy the Vampire Slayer video games. Apparently she played Buffy in whatever video games were out at that time. An unaired Buffy animated series pilot. She was in Happy Feet, and so she had some pretty, and she was in Spider-Man the Animated Series. She played Dr. Connor's wife in Spider-Man the Animated Series too. So she had some work there, but just doesn't appear that she's had much work recently. So I thought that she did the role well. She sounds like a young teenager. She gets the point across that she doesn't like Supergirl for no good reason, and I felt like her equally sort of verbally berating her stepfather, and just like I was waiting for her to be like, shut up. Like she just treats him like such crap. It's kind of funny. So yeah, I thought she did a great job.
Yeah, she's a little bit of a like stereotypical bratty teenager at points, but she's funny. She's funny in the role, and she does a good job with it. And then we have our main leaguers playing both Green Lantern and Stripe. We have Phil Lamar. I'll give it credit. They put he's in the suit basically the whole episode. So they have like they have a voice effect on him, like a mechanical robot voice on him. I'll be honest, I didn't realize that was Phil Lamar.
Agreed. Nope. Would not have guessed it. Nope. And this goes back to our review a couple weeks ago where we had Maria Canales playing dual leads.
Yeah.
Some of that was because those characters interacted several different times that it was even more distracting. Maybe it would have been the case with Mr. Lamar here. I was a little bit distracted when he was interacting with Machiste or whatever that guy's name was, the guy with the mace for a hand. I was like, all right, that's very clearly Phil Lamar talking to Phil Lamar. But it was a very brief interaction there. But as far as Stripe has quite a few lines in this, and I did, same as you, I did not pull out that was Phil Lamar. Very shocked when I got to the credits here.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, he does have his back and forth with Miss Lauren as Stargirl, I think is pretty fun in those opening scenes. Like he's constantly kind of shouting after her, being like, "Don't do that, get back here!" Like he's trying to be like the worried parent who has the teenager that isn't listening. He does a great job there. And then Green, as far as his performance as Green Lantern, he doesn't get a lot to do, but I do like his little interrogation at the end with Metallo. I feel like that's a fun little sequence there of him playing bad cop as the Green Lantern is fun there. But and then yes, we have of course the returning Nicole Tom once again as Supergirl, and I think she also voices Shakira for her one brief scene. So pretty much everybody pulling double or triple duty, it feels, in our cast here today. But does a really good job. Again, not we've already talked about our problems with the plot, so we don't need to go back over to that. But as far as her delivering the lines that were asked of her, she does a really good job. You have, and she gets to show a lot of different emotion as far as being, kind of her normal cheery self at the start. And, she and Green Lantern have a little banter about like, when they're flying back, why are we flying over the North Pole and all that. And then once she arrives in Skartaris and she realizes that her powers are fading, she's sort of really panicked and worried. And then ultimately we see her, her determination, her heroic side, but also she's getting weaker. And you could definitely hear that in her voice the longer she's around the kryptonite. Like she sounds like she's been put through the ringer by the end there, where she's, trying to break herself free from Metallo at the end when she grabs the dagger and pulls out his heart. So really good job by Miss Tom. But perhaps, as I think the phrase goes, that sometimes an actor elevates the material. Mm-hmm. And this is an episode where maybe the material on the page is not the most inspired, or not Mr. Wayne, as we mentioned, his writer, not our favorite work of his, but that still left us with a very strong performance from Miss Tom.
Yeah, I have no complaints for her as well. I think there wasn't a lot of room for her to show a ton of emotion, but she does obviously have to deal with the depowering and trying to reconcile the fact that this teenage girl doesn't like her for no good reason, and is gloating over the fact that she's losing her powers and getting her butt kicked by these reptile men at the beginning, and then at the end when she's sort of struggling against Metallo. So she does get a chance to kind of show her emotion there. She stands up and asserts that she has brains, which help her defeat Metallo. I liked that line. But yeah, overall, maybe not her best performance, but I do agree with you where without her performance, I think we would be looking at an even lower score at some of the other categories, perhaps, because I think her performance certainly elevated the rest of the cast and some of those scenes too.
Absolutely. So yeah, for all these reasons, and maybe this is, like we said, maybe this is the plot which we didn't like, bringing it down a little bit. I think everybody is good. I don't think anybody's great in this episode. So I ended up settling on a 6 out of 10 for my voice acting score.
Yeah, I just want just a tick higher. I went a 7 out of 10 for mine, but not that different. I guess, Liam, as we wrap things up here and start totaling up our scores, though, it's another one of those episodes where the sum of its parts, I think in this case, and that's why we always talk about rewatchability, the sum of its parts, our scores may not directly reflect how we ultimately feel about the episode at the end.
Sure.
Because I would be perfectly okay probably if this episode got launched into the sun and never seen again. We'll talk about that here in a second. But my score, totaling everything up here at the end, I end up with a kind of middle of the pack here, 26 out of 40. What about you?
Yeah, and I'm just a couple points lower at a 24 out of 40. So, as far as rewatchability goes, you get the little nugget of the Justice League is starting to figure out that something's up with all the supervillains. So that's your only argument, I think. And it's the debut of Supergirl's new look, but that's a tough ask. Like I said, I don't there's a lot of fun visuals in this episode. There's a lot of fun stuff, as we talked about in the episode, that we can enjoy still, but overall, I don't think it's a great episode, and I don't think it really moves the plot forward enough.
Mm-hmm.
As we have talked about, like a lot of these episodes start with like another battle going on that we don't know anything about.
Yep.
So this could have just easily been another throwaway line. Like if I think they reference this maybe in the next episode or two, where they're like, the same thing happened to Metallo. It's like, well, we could just assume, we could infer what that means. We don't. It's hard to say this is a must watch because of the 2 seconds at the end where Metallo's brain fries, but. That's my thought.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I think that I can back that up by saying I mentioned last week when we got season 3 on DVD, I watched through the entire series or entire season except for this episode, and didn't come back to it for months, maybe over a year. And guess what? I didn't miss anything. I didn't need to go back and watch it. I just was like, oh yeah, I never watched that Chaos at the Earth's Core episode. So I went back and watched it, and I was like, oh, that's fine. But it's not integral, I don't think, to the story. I think if you want to know what happens to Metallo, do you want to know what happens to Metallo? He dies. Like he did. Like if you want a interesting sort of off the wall deep dive into a really weird portion of the DC universe, here's an episode for you. But it's definitely not something I would say if you're watching this, which is what we talk about with rewatchability. Like, yeah, I'm not going to go back to this episode really at any point in the foreseeable future that I can think of. And I wouldn't recommend somebody else on a watch through like, hey, do I have to watch this episode? No, you don't have to watch that episode. You can skip that one. Like you can if you want to see something kind of goofy and different, but it's not mandatory. So yeah, I'd say it's skip for me. All right, Liam, let's wrap things up here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate you listening to this review. And don't forget, we would love your support for the podcast, and there are several different ways to do that. We'll list those here briefly. You can go ahead and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app. You can leave a review on our podcast app of choice, especially if it's Apple Podcast or Spotify. Leave a 5-star review. That helps us out a lot. If you listen on Apple Podcast, you leave a little review, blurb for us. It's 5 stars, and we read it on the air. We'll send you a little gift if you live within the continental United States as a thank you. So if you're listening, you haven't done that, you want to take the time to do that, we will see if we'll read that on the air in the next couple of weeks here. You can also follow us on social media, as we've mentioned a couple times here, at DCAU Review. Send us your fan names for Supergirl fanatics this week at DCAU Review. You can also check out the show notes, buy yourself a shirt or something at the merchandise store. You can also become a monthly supporter through the other link there. We have several monthly supporters that support us with their hard-earned dollars each and every month. We appreciate that. We greatly appreciate it. People giving of their hard-earned dollars to support us and encourage us to keep doing what we do. Liam, you can also subscribe to us on the Pod Tower at YouTube, as we talked about at the top of the program. That's youtube.com/the Pod Tower. And next week, this very episode will be the very episode that we'll be covering will also be available on every streaming platform, including that youtube.com/the Pod Tower channel. Why don't we talk a little bit about what we'll be reviewing next week? And I got to tell you, it's a little off the wall, but it's been a while, been quite a while, and so I'm actually kind of looking forward to it, as we have quite a landmark celebration here to discuss for our 4th week here of the month.
That's right. Not to quote the lead singer from Stained, but it has in fact been a while, and we are going back to something I think we covered this. That would have been in the 40s, I think.
Oh my goodness!
Way
back then.
We once upon a time we visited the pilot episode of Beware the Batman, some 250 plus episodes ago. Not to mention however many bonus episodes, very early on in our show's run. And we reviewed the pilot of that back then. And since we figure we lean very hard on The Batman and Batman the Brave and the Bold for good reason, because those shows are 2 of our favorites and also have the most episodes. But we thought, hey, that show is also currently and hopefully still will be next week when we go to look for it. Available on the Max streaming service here in the US. So we thought, hey, it's a little more accessible than it was. I'm pretty sure it was a little harder to find when we reviewed that episode back then. So it's a little easier to find now. Let's go back and visit another episode of Beware the Batman, as it does happen to be the 85th anniversary this year of the Dark Knight himself. So we'll probably be visiting quite a few Batman Elseworlds. I think it's a safe bet, maybe even more than we usually do.
It also helps that there's a lot of material to cover there when it comes to the Dark Knight. So, yeah, absolutely. Long live the Bat, as the saying goes. Looking forward to covering that with you next week, Liam. A often forgot, and certainly we talk about the Batman being unheralded. I think nearly forgotten is Beware the Batman. So, very interested in diving into another episode of that with you. It's going to be a ton of fun. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Goodbye.